welcome to our first project. In this project, we're going to build a Todos app. In this project, we're going to practice everything we have learned so far during this course. Before we get starting coding, we're going to follow some of the software development life cycles stages. We're going to do planning, design, and development. And don't worry, I already have everything here in the Notion guide. So over the Notion guide, the link is in the video description. And let's get started. The first thing I want to show you is the complete app that we're going to build. So this is the app right over here. In the app, you're going to be able to load pending to-dos, and you can delete, update, you can create new to-dos, and you have a list of pending to-dos and completed to-dos as well. So we're going to put this app together. We're going to have a form where the user can type here and create a new to-do. The to-do will be added. We're going to get a notification at the top. And then if you need to update, you will click on update, fix that here, say learn React, and click update. You can update your to-dos. You can mark it as completed or even delete those if you don't need them anymore. So by clicking on the checkbox, that will mark the to-do as completed. If you scroll down to the completed to-dos, you will see your to-do there. You can also delete it if you no longer need the to-do. So now with a view of what we're going to be building, let's go back to the Notion guide. And let's start by looking at the planning stage here. Let's brainstorm about what we're going to create. We need to create an app that allows users to track different tasks or to-dos. Let's use something called user stories to detail the functionality in our application. So user stories like little sentences of describing what a user is supposed to do in your application. So for example, as a user, I want to see a list of pending to-dos and a list of completed to-dos. As a user, I want to be able to create a new to-do. As a user, I want to be able to mark to-dos as completed. As a user, I want to be able to delete to-dos that I no longer need. And finally, as a user, I want to be able to edit or update to-dos. By looking at the user stories that we're going to create, we're going to be implementing all the basic CRUD functionality. CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete, which are the basic functionalities that you will have in an application. We're also going to be using an API to help us mock up this application. So we're going to make a fetch request to an API. Actually, the API is the, I think I have it here open, the JSON placeholder API, which is going to give us some dummy data to help us create this application. Then later, we're going to use the to-dos that we create in our application. And we're also going to use Tailwind, which is the CSS framework, which is going to allow us to at least have some basic CSS so we can speed up our development of this application. We're also going to use Justify, which is the notifications that you saw in the completed application. This is the NPM link to that package, and there's also a link to the documentation as well. And finally, we're going to use UUID to add a unique identifier to our to-dos objects. So those are basically all the integrations that we're going to do in our application. And then we can move on to the design phase here. So here's a quick mock-up of the application. So I put this together before I completed the application. So this is kind of like a visual drawing. I created this using draw.io. Where you can go, and there's also many other websites that you can use to create your mockups. But a quick one that I like to use is draw.io. Here I have a input form where you can create the new to-do. Then you have a button that allows you to create a to-do. You're going to have a list of pending to-dos here. And you're going to have a list of completed to-dos. And then you're gonna have a checkbox next to each to do. And then when you click on those, it will mark the to do as completed, and it should render the to do in the completed to dos list. And we're also going to have a delete and update button, which I didn't include here because it was getting too big. I want to keep it simple. When you click on update, it should give you the input, and you can update the to do and then hit save or update, and it should show the new data in the UI. Now here's a flow chart of how we're going to design the application. We're going to have a app component, which is going to be the main component of the whole entire app. So the app component is going to render a to-do list. The to-do list is going to contain all the completed to-dos and our pending to-dos. The to-do list is going to use a to-do item component, which is going to be each single to-do, where we're going to have the update button and the delete button as well. Also, we're going to have the create form component, which is going to have some local state to hold the new information that the user is typing. We're going to have some global state in the app component, where we're going to have all the to-dos that we currently have in our application. And then we're going to use props to pass that data down to to-do list and then to do. Also, we're going to put all the functionality or the handlers that we need, and we're going to pass it down to the component that needs to access those functions to update the state, to add a new to do, etc. So this is the basic data flow of the application here. We're going to have some local state and some global state as well. So in each component is going to look just like this here. We're going to have each to-do is going to be an object. It's going to have a user ID. So this is just going to represent, let's say, the user who created the to-do, right? And then we're going to have an ID for the to-do. This is a unique ID for each to-do. And then this is just going to be a dummy user ID, but we're not going to have any users right now, so it's just going to be there because the data that we're going to use also includes one, so we're going to keep it in there. And then we're going to have a title. The title is going to be the text that the user types in the input, right? Learn React.js is going to be our to-do text. And then we're going to have a completed property, which is going to be initially false, and if it's completed, it's going to change to true. And that's pretty much it. That's all the data that each to-do is going to have. Some of the components that we're going to create, you can already see it here in the description: the create to-do form, the to-do list, the single to-do, the edit to-do form, and of course the app.js, which is already created when we open up the code sandbox that we're going to use. So use this link to open up a new code sandbox, and let's click on fork so we can have a new copy, so that way we can get started right away. All right, so now that we have our code sandbox ready, let's start by looking at the public folder. In the public folder, we have our index.html file, which contains the CDN to Tailwind. Tailwind is a CSS framework, which is going to allow us to use this CSS library or framework, so we can speed up our development time by using Tailwind to do some basic CSS in the application. So that's already included. It's right over here, so we can just close that up. I just wanted to show you where it's located. Our style.css is empty, and then we have our index.js, which is connecting all of our application, and then we have the app component, which is the tap component in our app. So this one right over here. So to get started, let's first start by fetching some dummy data from JSON placeholder. So from here, we're going to, you can find this link in the Notion at the bottom. I'm going to add all these links to the final Notion guide. So when you see this video, there should be, everything should be there. But here, if we navigate to JSON placeholder in this link here, we can see that we can make a fetch request to this endpoint, to-dos. And then if we fetch some to-dos, we can see some data that is going to be returned. So there's a few resources here that we can use. There's posts, comments, albums, photos, to-dos, and users. So we're going to use the to-dos. If we open this in another tab, we can see the data that this API is going to send us. So we're going to be working with an array of to-dos. Each to-do match our same structure here that we have for the to-do. So if we go back here, we're going to have a user ID, an ID for the to-do, some title. This is just lowering up some text, some dummy text here, and then complete or false. There are some false, there are some that are true. So that way this can also help us put together the completed to-dos and the pending to-do list that we're going to do. So let's begin by fetching this data. So let's import in the app.js. Let's import from React. We're going to need use effect because we need to do some data fetching when the component mounts, and then we're going to need some state so we can add the new data that comes back from this API. So now let's go inside of the app component and let's call our use effect. So we call use effect, and use effect is going to take in a callback function like so. And then the second parameter that we need to, the second argument to the use effect is going to be a array of dependencies. Right now I'm going to pass in an empty array because I just want this to fire off when the component mounts for the first time. So inside of the use effect, let's create a new function. Let's call this one fetch to-dos. And let's make that one a async function. And there we go. Now, the first thing we want to do, let's wrap this into a try catch so we can, because we're going to perform some API call. So let's just console log here the error if we have any errors. And inside the try, let's use the fetch API. Let's initialize, let's say const response or res equals, let's use the await. So we can await for fetch to go and get us some new to do. So to fetch, we can pass in the URL here. So we can go and fetch some to-dos. So now we have an async function. Let's wrap this into quotes. So now here we have an async function. We're going to make a fetch request. We need to mark that away because that's an asynchronous operation. And then we're going to, as soon as we get the response, we're going to grab the data. So we're going to say constant data equals await res.json, so we can parse the data that came in from the response. And then we're going to, let's log the information. So let's do console.log data to see if everything is working first. And before we can see anything, we need to go after the function definition, and let's call fetch to-dos here. So we can open the console here at the bottom to see the data. So right now you can see I have 200 200 objects, so an array of 200 elements. That's a lot of to-dos. So this is all the 200 to-dos that are coming back from the API. So now that we have this data in here, we can confirm we have the data in the console. What we can do, we can create some new state variable here at the top. So let's create const to-dos and then set to-dos, and then let's set that equals to EU state, and then we're going to initialize that to maybe an empty array. So what we're going to do is that now that the data has come back from the API at this point, we want to use the fetch to-dos. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to call fetch to-dos here, and I'm going to pass in the data that came back from the API. So now we should have all those 200 to-dos inside of the to-dos state variable. So we could go to React DevTools here, and if we click on app, we could make this a little bit bigger. We can see in the state now we have all of the to-dos, and we can see if I can break this, make this bigger. No, but we can open one of these up and we can see the user ID, title, and completed. So we got 200 of those in there. That is actually a lot of to-dos. So what I want to do, I just want to grab just 10 of those. So let's see, we could do here, let's just do it before here. Let's do const to-dos data equals data dot slice, and I want to grab the first 10. So from 0 to 10, I want to grab those first 10. And then I want to use my to-dos data variable. Let's console log it, and let's also put that one into the state, so we don't have all those 200. So now, if let's hit refresh here in the browser. And now if we look at the console, we only have 10 to-dos. And then in the state, we have also, we should have the 10 to-dos because we're using the same variable here now. So this might need, I need another refresh so we can see the data into the state. But that's fine, we should have this 10 here because we're console logging the same variable. So now, remember the how the use effect works, right? We're using the use effect to run when the component mounts at the first time. So as soon as the app is loaded, we're going to fire off our fetch to-dos. Fetch to-do is going to make a get request to this API. It's going to go and fetch some to-dos. So we're using async await, and we're putting that data when it comes back to the state. And what happens when we update the state, our component is going to re-render. So that's going to cause a re-render right over here at this point, line 14. So now that we have that data into the state, I think it's time to maybe, let's create a new folder in the source folder here. So let's create a new components folder. And inside components folder, let's create a to-do list. So to-do list components. So let's do to-do list.js. That's fine. To-do list.js. So in this component, let's rename it to-dos. Cool. So in this component here, we're going to initialize a brand new component. So let's do a function to-do list component here, and let's create the body of the function and return. Let's create a parentheses, wrap this into a div. Let's put an h1 that says to-dos. Let's just say to-dos for now, so we can have some, so we can test the component to see if it's rendering fine. And then at the bottom we can say exports default equal export ts, and then to-dos list. To-dos list. We don't need this equal signs. Cool. So now let's import this to-do list back into the app component. So app component here, we can do import to-dos list. Oops. To-dos list from tab /components /to-do list. And now let's render this to-do list. Let's render that right over here. And we can see Todos App, which is this H1 right over here. And then to-dos from the to-do list that we just created here. Cool. So let's see. And what we need now is to, instead of just displaying to-dos, we already have this display here in the H1. So let's pass down this data to our to-do list component. So we can pass the to-dos via props by going into the component here, where we're calling the component, and passing to-dos, and then this is the prop name to-dos, and we're going to pass in this to-do variables that we have at the top. So now we're passing the to-dos into a prop called to-dos into the to-dos list component. And then we can save that, go to the to-dos list here. We could destructure the to-dos here, and then we can put a console log of to-dos just to verify that we have some to-dos coming from this component. So if we look at the console, we got some log in here, but it could be from here. So let's comment this out. We don't need this console log here. We know we're getting our data. So now let's confirm. Let's put some message here from to-dos list. From to-dos list, yeah. This is where we're getting it from. We can also look at the React DevTools if it's working. Let me refresh it. Click on to-do list. And in to-do list, we have in props, we have a prop called to-dos, which is our array of to-dos. Cool, so now we have it right over here. We can get rid of this if we want, because now we confirm that that's there. Now, our next step will be to map over the to-dos. So in here, instead of just this H1, let's get rid of that H1. Let's create a section here for our, this is gonna be for the pending to-dos. So let's put a comment here, pending to-dos. Let's comment that out. And inside the section here, we're going to, let's have an H2 to indicate that this is going to be our pending to-dos, like so. We don't need that. And then after the H1, let's say at the beginning, our to-dos is going to be an empty array, right? So when we pass it, we're passing it down right away. This is going to take some milliseconds for this data to come back from the API. So in here, let's pass in curly brackets. And in here, let's make sure we have, let's say, to-dos dot length. So to make sure we have some to-dos in there, and then we're going to map over to-dos, to-dos like so. So we're gonna do to-dos that map. But before we map over the to-dos, right here we confirm that we have to-dos that is not empty. At the beginning is empty, so we're gonna make sure we have some to-dos, and then we're going to have we could even say to-dos that length greater than 1, but I think this will work. We'll check it out in a second. So after we confirm we have some to-dos, we can do to-dos that map, but let's filter them first, because in here we just want to render the to-dos that are pending. So right now our to-dos are going to be completed or not completed. So I'm just calling it pending, but this is the ones that are not completed. So we're going to use the filter function from the array. We're going to grab each to-do, and we're going to return the to-do dot completed. All right, we're going to look at the completed property from the object and make sure that they equals to false. So we only return the to-dos that are not completed. And I think we can bring this to the next line like this. And then in the next line, we can do the that map. And here for now, let's grab each to-do and let's render a H4 for now, an H3. And let's show the to-do in curly brackets here. Let's do to-do dot text to see if we have something in here. All right, so in here we have to-dos dot length and to-dos dot filter. So we're grabbing each to-do, we're checking that the to-do that completed is equals to false, so all the false they should be returned. We still don't see anything here. Let me see if there's any errors here. Error 8 let me refresh this just in case. Let's see, to do that map. Let's see what we have. Let's look at the React document, DevTools. We have some to-dos here. We're checking the completed is false, and then the title should be displayed here now. Still don't see anything. Let me see if what do we have pending here. So here, if we take a look at line 10, but first of all, let's call this here to do instead of to do's, so we can keep this singular. And then down here, if we take a look at let's console log the to-dos here again. And in here, if we open up one of these array, which is our array objects, we have title. I'm calling text, so this is why it's not showing. So let's change text to title. And then here we go. We can see some data in here. Let me make sure we have everything else here correctly. So we are receiving the to-dos via props. We're making sure we have some to-dos in the array, and then we're doing a dot filter so we can get all of the to-dos that the completer is equals to false, and then we're mapping over those. So we can also display more information here about the to-dos, but we're going to do that in a separate component. So we're just testing that we're getting the data all the way here, and now it's being rendered on the screen. So if we take a look at the text here real quick, if we look for one with this text, we have that the completed is equals to false. So this is going to be one of our pending to-dos. So we're also going to do the same. Let's repeat these steps here again down here. After this first section, let's do another section. Let's call this one completed to-dos. Let's make that a comment. So here, let's just add another section for our completed to-dos. And then here, let's do the send steps. So let's put an H2 as well. And let's say completed to-dos. And down here, we're gonna do the same steps we did at the top. Let's do to-dos dot length, and then we're going to do to-dos, and then we can go to the next line to say dot filter, and we're going to grab each to-do, and we're going to make sure that we grab the to-do dot complete, that the completed property is equals to true. And then we're going to do a dot map. I'm going to grab each to do, and then we're going to, let's display another H3 in here with the curly brackets in here and say to do dot title. So it's title, not text, in the property name here. So now we have a completed, missing an E here. We can see it right over here, completed to-dos. Whoops. Bring this back over here. So we have the completed to-dos here. Let me refresh this so we can read it. What is this? Here, there we go. Completed to-dos. So we have some pending to-dos, all of these here, and then the completed ones right over here. So let's make a separate to-do component so we can, instead of rendering the H3, we're gonna have a separate component. So let's create a new file. Let's call this to-do item.js. In to-do item.js, we're going to have another function component. We're going to call it to-do item. Let's do the function body, return. Let's return a div for now. And let's see, we can display inside here. Let's just have a div for now, so we can style this in a second. And in here, we're going to accept via props each to do singular. And let's display the to do title in here. So let's do to do dot title. All right, we'll probably see the same, but let's use some Tailwinds to create a background color. So let's add a class name. So if you're pretty new to or completely new to Tailwinds, Tailwinds is kind of like having inline CSS. So now that we have the CDM in the index.js, we can use any of the CSS Tailwinds classes. So they have colors. So in line, we're going to use the class name to add some of these class names from Tailwind. So for example, now I want a background color. So if we look for, here we have everything for Flexbox, layouts. If I'm looking for colors, I have all the colors here. And you can find this link in the Notion guide at the bottom. So let's see what we can find here. So we have for sizing, spacing, Flexbox, grid, all the colors are all the way up here. Then we have typography, backgrounds, and background color here. We can see that we can add a class name of BG dash and then the color that we're looking for. We can have this BG Slate 50, which is going to give us this color here. So we have the colors over here. We have slate, gray, zinc, and we have all of these here with different values available all the way here. So if we go back to the background, which is what I want to add right now, so background color, and let's do a BG dash violet 500, which is what I have in the completed app. So let's do a class name in this div, and let's add a BG dash violet dash 500. If we save that and let's refresh this. To do, so let's just do and I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's do an export statement here. So let's do export default to do item. Don't forget to export your component, and we're still not even importing this component. So we created this component to replace this H3 that we have here. So this to do item is our single to do. So we're going to pass each to do here. We're going to display the title inside of this div for now, and we're going to add a background color of violet 500. Also, let's make this title. Let's do a class name here, and let's do text white. So text dash white. So if we want to add text color, you can do text and then the color name. If we do background, you do BG and then the color name. So let's import this to-do item in here at the top of the to-do list. So import to-do item from /to-do item, and then let's use the to-do item. Let's copy this name, and instead of rendering the H3 here, we're going to replace the H3, right, without just leaving this closing parenthesis there. And then let's do a to-do item here. Let's pass in a to-do prop and pass in each of this to-do here. So this to-do is going to go in here. Right, so now we're passing it over there. Now we can see that it's rendering in this tab list, is already rendering each to-do item inside of the component here that we created with the background color of violet 500 and text white. And let's do the same. Let's just copy this and then render that down here in this second list of completed to-dos. Cool. So now we have our two lists, pending to-dos and completed to-dos, inside of the to-do item. So we can go back to the to-do item, and then we can, let's do in the main div here, we can also do some padding -5. So we can add some padding to the to-do item component, and then we can do a margin top, so empty dash maybe 10. I think that's what I use. So just to have some padding to the top of each to-do element, to-do item component. So at the top, we just add in 10. So for padding, you can do P-5, and for margin, you can do M. We're just doing margin top, so empty -10. So these are similar to Bootstrap if you used Bootstrap before. All right, so let's see what else we can do here before we go. This is fine. We got the list. We have our list of to-dos, and we have two different lists right over here. We have the pendings and we have the completed to-dos. Let's see if I need to do anything else here. Let's add to the H2s here, the pending to-dos. So let's add a class name here. Let's add some styling. Let's do a font. Let's make this darker by saying font-bold. And let's also do underline like so. Underline And then let's copy that, and let's also do that in this H2 right over here. Cool. All right, so we have we can add some spacing to these two, but that's fine for now. I want to do the minimum CSS so we can keep moving and working on the application. Let's now go back to the to-do item, and in the to-do item, let's continue adding the stuff that we need. So we need to work on a label. Let's add a label right after the text here. Let's do a label. Let's close that label here, and let's say mark as completed, and then let's do let's have a HTML form for, and let's have a text here. So this HTML that we're going to add here is going to be for the checkbox that we're going to have at the bottom. So let's say mark as completed. Let's just have this checkbox here. So let's do an input of, right here we can see the label, and then the input here, let's do make an input of type checkbox. So checkbox, and then let's add some space here. Let's just add a React space like this, and okay, that's cool. It's still adding the space there, that's fine. So let's make this text here. Let's do a class name. Let's make that text white also. So let's do text dash white. Now that's white. In the input here, we're going to, let's have a name for this input, and let's have an ID for the input. Let's name this one mark as completed, and then let's repeat that for the name as well. So we can add a name. We got a name, we got an ID. So the HTML4 is going to be pointed to the input here. And then we're going to keep it like this. So now we got the checkbox here, right? We're going to work on that in a bit. So we just need to have the UI in here first. And then let's see what else we need to implement on this to-do item. Let's add right after the input here. Let's have another div so we can group together the buttons. So let's have a button here for update. Right, we're just gonna create the UI for now. We're gonna be building this little by little. Update. Let's copy that down and change it to delete. Cool. So now let's do this div here. Let me see, for the button. Let's do first for the div. Let's add a class name of, if we want to add a flexbox, we can go back to the Tailwind documentation. If you just go over to flexbox, in here you will have the different classes. So flex direction, you can add a flex row if you want to add the flex direction to row, flex call to add the flex direction to column. So here's the class name, and here's the property that is going to add to each one. So flex direction, we have flex, the different classes here, the different properties, and you can choose the order. You can use grid. So let's use some of this here. So in here, let's just first say flex to make this a flex container. And then we're going to say justify dash between. And then let's also do a width. Let's add some width to the div so it doesn't take all that space. Let's see if we can do a width of dash 50 or let's do 40. And then let's do what else we can do here. So let's add a margin top dash 5 so we can separate these two a little bit from the top. And now we can go to each button here, and to the buttons we can add a class name, and the class name is going to be, let's just do text dash white. And I'm going kind of fast with the Tailwinds because Tailwinds is something separate. I just wanted to throw it in here so we can have some CSS that is quick and nice to see. Let's add some border to the button. Let's add a padding of -1 so we can have some padding. Let's also have a hover effect. We can do hover colon, and then we can change the BG color, the background color, to amber dash 300. And then the also a separate hover state here. We can say it also to change the text to black so it can look nicer. So now when you hover over this, the background changes to amber 300 and the text turns black. We can copy this and add it to the second button here. And then when you hover over those, they change color. Cool. Right now our buttons, they don't do anything. We can click on them. They don't do anything special. These are all just UI at the moment. So I think this is good for now. Let's go back to our next step, which should be working on the CRUD functionality. First, let's get rid of this warning here. So this warning is telling us that each element on a list should have a, where's the warning? Let me refresh this. Is this the warning I'm looking for? This one. Each child in a list should have a unique key prop. So we can set a key prop. If we go back to the to-do list, we can set a key prop here. So we can say key. And then key, we're gonna set it to to-do.id. And then we can copy this and put it also on this one. So React wants a unique identifier on each one of the elements or items in the list, so you can if the list changes, so if you add or delete any of those elements in the list, it can render those faster, so improve the performance of your application. Let's now work on the create. So we have the read of CRUD, so we can read the to-dos. So now let's work on a new component here. So let's do a create to-do form.js. In here, we're going to create a small form, which is where the user is going to type the text for the to-do. So let's start with our functional component. So let's say function create to-do form. And here we're going to have a return let's have the normal div here. Inside the div, we're going to have a form. So let's say, let's have an h3 that says create a new to-do. And then right after the h3, we can do a form like so. Inside of this form, we're going to have, we just need one input for the text. So let's do a label. And the label is going to say, enter a task. And then we're going to, after the label, let's do a input of type text. Cool. So in here, let's do to the label, let's add a HTML form, HTML4 title. So we're going to link this label to the input. So let's do an ID of title and a name of title. So we can use the name to create our object in a second. So we have the type, the name. Let's have a placeholder. Let's render this, because right now let's do export default create to-do form, and let's render this to-do form up at the top. So we can go back to app.js and let's import the create to-do form from / components. Oh, not cons, but import. Let's do this again. / component / to do create to do form. Let's render this form. Let's do that right at the top here. So let's do here, show the create to do form at the top right over here. Here's the input form. We just have the text. Let's go back here with the input. That's not the one. Let me close that. Here's the input right over here. We cannot see it very well because it's just clear white. So let's do, actually, let's just have a placeholder first. So let's do a placeholder. And let's say, let's just have anything like create sales report, like an example of a to-do right in here. So it's gonna be the placeholder or the text at in the background. Let's have a class name here. We wanna add some stylings. Well, to the input, let's just do a padding of 1. Oops. So we can create some padding inside of the input. And then let's make this require. So the input, the user cannot hit submit without filling out this input. Right after that input, let's have another input of type submit. For the button, and then the value, which is gonna be the text. Let's change it to create. So we can display create instead of submit. Let's add a background color to the div here at the top. Let's do a class name. Let's do a PG dash, let's do amber, same thing I did earlier, amber dash 300. Let's add some padding dash 5. Let's also do a margin bottom of, I want to say 10. Let's round this up, so let's say rounded, and I don't know, you can see it very clearly, it's kind of touching. So let's see, let's add to the app. Let's see, let's go to the app component here really quick, and to the div here, let's change the div to a main tag, main. And to the main tag here now, let's add a class name. And in here we can add a, let's just do a flex container in general. And then we're going to say, give me a column, flex dash column. Everything goes back to the way we had it. And then let's do items dash center. All right, that's better. So now it's not touching. We can see that it's rounded now. All right, so we can leave this like this for now. Where's the to-dos app? It's at the top here. To the to-dos app, let's just do a little bit of class name here. Let's add a margin Y, so top and bottom dash 10. And let's do, that could be too much, that's fine, I'll leave it like that. And then font dash bold. And then let's set the text to 2 extra large, 2 XL, 2 XL. There you go. Cool. All right, let's leave it like that. Let me lower this here now. Can I grab this? There we go. Cool. All right, so now we can see the form. I'm gonna go back to the form. We can see the pending to-dos. We had the buttons, so the UI pretty much is looking better. Let's go back to the form now. And let's see for the form. Title, what happened here? To the, grab this. This is supposed to be in here. ID title, name title, title. I gotta be careful before I mess this up. Title, cool. So now let's see what we need to do next in the form. Okay, so now let's see here in the form, the user type, but now we need to put this text, we need to create some local state to the to this component, to the create form. This create button is not looking very nice, so let's add a quick class name. Let's do margin left and right, so mx-1. Let's do a bg-violet-500, text-white. Let's do, well, I need more than, let's do a p-1 for padding. Let's make it rounded. Whoops, rounded. Cool, that's fine, we can leave it like that. Cool, so now let's work on the local state, because the user can type here, but if we hit create, the normal behavior of when you submit a form is that it's going to refresh the app or submit this app and create a reload. So we don't want that to happen in our single page application in React. So what we're going to do, let's import useState. So we're going to take over control of this form by creating a new state variable. So useState, we're going to create a new const. Here we're gonna say title. So we need to grab the title and set title, and then we're gonna set that equals to useState, and we can initialize it to just empty quotes or an empty string like so. So let's see, we have a new state variable. So now we want to have a control form. Right now the form is not controlled by React, so let's take over the control of the form by setting the value of the form to curly brackets title. So the title stay variable here, right? So now the value for this form, for this input, is always going to be whatever title is. So right now, if you try to type on the form, nothing's going to happen because now this value is not changing. But if I change the value here to say hello, now you see hello there. So right now you can see that React is kind of like giving us a warning here. So you provided a value prop to a form field without an unchanged handler. So it's giving us a warning, so it's a reminder, hello, you pass a state variable here, but there's no way to update this here now, just a quick reminder. So what we need here, let's create a simple handle change here. It's like const handle change, and let's set that to a arrow function where we're going to take in the event, and we're going to call the set title. Right, this is the function, the updater function to update our title so we can update the value. We're going to pass in the e.target.value, which is the value of the text that the user is typing on the form. So after creating this handle change function, we can copy this and we can go to the input here and we can listen for a onChange event. And whenever we have an onChange, so when the user is typing, just call my handle change function. So now if you go back and type here, you can see the text again. So now React has control of this input. And now, but if you type and hit create, it's still doing that re-render. So now we need to take control, not just the input here, but we need to take control of the form in general, so the whole entire form. In order to do that, we're going to listen for a onSubmit event here. And whenever we have an onSubmit, we're going to have a function here called handle submit, which is going to be a arrow function. We're going to take in the event, and we're going to perform some steps here, and we're going to call this handle submit whenever we have a onSubmit here on the form. So we add the handle submit form function to the form onSubmit event, and the handle change to the input. So now we can update. Now what we want is that when the user submits the form, so when the user clicks on this input, this create here, we want to, first thing we need to do, let's do e.prevent default. So that way we can stop the default behavior of submitting or making the request and refreshing the browser. So now, just by doing this, whenever the user types and hits create, nothing happens, right? Because what this is doing now is calling this function. And right now we don't have anything here, but if we want, we can console log the title state variable here from the top, for example. So if we do that and it's here, we can see the text here. So if I type hello world and hit create, we got the text. So now we have full control of the form here. So what we want now is to create a object which is going to be the same object as the mock data that we have. So it's going to look exactly like these objects that we have here, right? One of these objects here. So let's build that object right over here. So let's say const new to do. set that equals to an object, and for the object we need a title, right? A title property, and which is going to be the value of the title, so whatever info the user typed there. So we could do title colon title if you want, like this, that will work. Also, if the property, if the key and the value are the same, you can just have one instead of repeating yourself. It's up to you which one you want to use. I'm just going to keep it like this for more of a clear syntax. And then in here, we need an ID for the to do. So down here, let's add another dependency to the project. So let's type UUID. And we're going to click on this one, UUID. We have a new dependency here. So at the top here, the top of the component, let's import. Let's go to the, you can find this link in the Notion at the bottom. So this is the package that we just installed here, UUID. So in order to do UUID, this is a package that is going to give you unique or create unique identifiers. If you have a project, like a local project, you can install it using npm like this. And all you need to do is import it at the top of your project like this. So we can copy this line, let's bring it over to here. Right, so we import v4 as UUID from UUID, and then the way we can use it is we just need to call UUID v4, and that's going to return a unique identifier. So we're going to create a key of ID. We're going to call UUID, and that is going to add a new ID, a unique identifier for our to-do object here. And then by default, we're going to set the completed to false, right? This is a brand new to-do that we're doing. So we're going to by default set it to false. And here, let's console log the new to-do. So after we create our to-do with the title that the user that we got from the input, that the user types in the input, we're going to add an ID, and we're going to add the completed and set it to false by default. So now when I type here, let's say learn React and hit create. Now we have an object at the bottom with the title, a unique ID, and completed is false. We could add also the user ID, but we're not going to use it. So I just had it in the documentation so you can see what this is, but we don't have a user right now, so we can ignore this one for now. So now we have the to-do here. So we have the data. So let's go back to here really quick. So right now we have our app component. We have our to-do state, which has all the to-dos. And then we're passing those to-do down to to-do list, and we're rendering the completed to-dos and the pending to-dos, passing each to-do to a to-do item component. Now we have a new to-do that we're creating here. In the create to-do form, we have some local state, which has our object here now. So we need to pass this state to the to-do state that we have in our app component. But if you remember, the data in React only flows in one way, so one direction of the data flow. It doesn't go up, so we cannot just send it up automatically. We need to create a way for or a function that we already have up here in the app component, so we can pass down the function to the create form, and then we pass that object that we created, and then that function is going to add it to the state. So we're going to do what we're going to pass down is a function that is going to update the state, the global state, kind of like our main state, not global, but main state, with the new state that we have in the create to do form. So we're going to pass down that function, and that function is going to add this to do, the new to do to the to do's array. So let's go back to the app now. And what we're going to do, let's head back to the app component. Right, in app component, we have all of the to-dos right at the top, just like I show you here. Right, this is the state, the to-dos. So let's create some functions here. I'm gonna create all the functions here, so we're gonna pass it down. We're practicing our prop drilling. Later, we're going to update this application to use more efficient ways of handling our data. For now, we're just gonna use what we know, which is prop drilling. So in here, we're gonna create some CRUD functions, and we're going to start with the create. So let's call this one, this is gonna be our create from CRUD. We're gonna call this one add to do. So this function is going to, we're going to pass this function down so we can add a new to do to our global, to our main state, to the to do state here. So when we have a separate function here, what we want to do here, we want to take in here a new to do. We're going to expect a new to do to be passed as an argument. And then we're going to call this set to do's function, which is this one here, which is going to allow us to update the state. And we're going to take in the previous state, so the previous to-dos that we have already there. And what we want to do is that we want to set a new array with the new to-do that is being passed in, and we want to spread the previous to-do, so ... previous to-dos, like so. So right now, if I hover over this, read-only message, set to-dos, message, because I'm missing an equal signs here. There we go. So now I created a separate function. We could definitely pass this down, the set to-dos, but I want to keep all the logic up here. I also want to do something extra later down here. We're going to do it right after we can add a new to-do. So that's why I created a different function, because we still need to write more stuff here later on. So what we're going to do, we're going to use this add to do function. We're going to pass it down. So we're going to do some prop drilling now. So we need to pass this down to the create form, right? Because in the create form, let me close this to-do list. In the create form, we need to call that function here, pass in the new to-do that we're expecting here. So pass this add to do. We're going to use the same name, add to do. We're going to pass in our add to do function here to here. Right, so now we're passing the add to do, which is this function here, via props in a prop called add to do, same name. So we can now go to the create to do form. We can receive or destructure add to do here. And then instead of console logging this, we can call add to do here. And we pass in the new to do. Right, so the new to do, let's see. Yeah, we calling add to do, passing the new to do, which is this object right over here. And then we can test this out, because now when we call this handle submit, when the user submit the form or click on create, we're going to prevent the default, create this new to do object, call the add to do function, which we're passing down from the app, passing it down here, receiving it right over here. So we're passing that new to do, and that new to do is going to come in here, and we're going to call this set to do's, which is the function to update the to do's state. And then we're going to pass in a brand new array with the new to do in the front, and then we're going to spread the previous to do's, which are these that you can see here, in the UI. So now let's test this here by saying, let's refresh this. So if I type here, learn CSS and hit create, we have a new to-do added, and then we can see that we have the previous to-dos here. All right, we still have all of them down here. Pending to-dos. Well, I cannot see everything here. Okay, there we go, completed to-dos. So now we still need to clear this input. So in here, in the create to-dos, after we add the to-do, we can call the set title, this function here, set title, and we can set that back to just an empty string like so. And then refresh just to make sure everything is working. Let's type this again, learn CSS, and then hit create. It clears the input and it adds the new to do, learn HTML, create, and now we have the new one at the top. Cool. That's the create to do. So now we can create, we can read, right? Right now we're reading everything from the to-dos array, which we're getting from our API. And also the ones that we're creating now, we can also create new to-dos, and we put together a create to-do form. We created a function that we're passing down to the create to-do form, and we're calling that function right over here, so we can add a brand new to-do to our application. Before we move to the next step, let's go back to app.js and let's add React Justify for the alerts. So now we can notify the user, give the user a more friendly UI by showing them that the to-do was created. So this links, they should be listed at the bottom of the Notion guide. So what we need to do here in the npm, we can see that we can, if you have a local project, you could use npm to install this here. Since we're working on the code sandbox, we can just type here react dash toast justify, and then click on this one. Make sure you just justify, not this one, just the first one there. And then now we have a new dependency here. So the way we use this, we have some information here. You can import a toast container and a toast function from React Justify. You can also import some CSS that we need, so in order for this to work properly. And then we can render the toast container where we want to render the notification or the alert. And then we can call the function and pass in the text that we want to display. So in here, there's some link to a documentation, which is going to take you here. It should be the same. So in this website, this is the same website, there's a nice friendly menu that you can create different notifications. So here you can change the position, the type, the theme, and then more options here at the bottom. So this is a sample one here, which we have a we call it toast. We pass in some emoji and some text, and then this is the options object, which is setting the position, auto close in milliseconds, if you want to hide the progress bar, and then more options here at the bottom. So you can read through this here. I'm just gonna grab kind of like the default stuff and add it to the project, and then you can change it up however you want. So going back to the application here, we're going to, let's import at the top. Let's go to the documentation here. Let's grab these two lines. So we can import the container, we can import the CSS, bring it over to the app.js. We can put it right after the form. And then what we need to do back here says we need to render the toast container. This is where we want to show the notifications. So back in app.js, we're gonna copy this name. We're gonna scroll down, and I want to place this all the way at the top, on top of the Todos app. So here we're just gonna call this component. And then the last thing I want to do is let's create up here, and let's have it right after this before the CRUD. Let's have a comment here saying alerts helper function, and then here we're gonna say const show alerts, and then we're going to take in a string to display in the toast function here, right? So now we're gonna call toast from in here, and whenever we need to pass to call the toast, we're gonna call show alert, and we're gonna pass in a string. So let me grab this example here and bring it over to the app. I'm gonna call it here. And instead of saying always wow so easy, which is true, we're going to delete this here. Let's replace the quotes to backticks, and then let's do str here for the string to display the string here, and then top right auto close in 500 milliseconds. I'm gonna leave everything like this, just like default. The theme, let's just change it to dark. But then this is up to you. You can customize this and play around with the documentation here. So let's say I want to use this show alert now. And then what I want to do, I want to come down here after we add the new to-dos. I want to call this set show alert, and then we can pass in this string of to-do created, like so. So now we have this little helper function, which is always going to take in a string. It's going to pass in the string here, and it's going to show the alert with these options. So if we create a new to-do here, learn React, and hit create, we have the alerts and 500 milliseconds, and it goes away. Pretty cool. Very easy. So that's good for the create. Now we can continue working with the to-dos that we have created, because now we have to be able to mark it as complete, and I see a typo here somewhere inside of the to-do item. So I'm just gonna go here and say completed. Cool. So now we can work on being able to click on this and update the state of this to-do to complete it and mark it as true. Then we can delete and update as well, so we can finish up the CRUD functionality. Cool. So let's see. Right now, if we scroll down, right, this doesn't do anything. If we scroll down, well, these that are already completed, they should be marked. The checkbox should be clicked, right, because these are already completed. So let's head over to the component. Let's close the form. Let's stay in the to-do item here. In the to-do item, we can use the checkbox, this here, right? Let's put a little space here. So we can use, this is completed, keep missing the E. So in this checkbox, we can use, right, because we're getting the to-do here. So we have all the info from the to-do. Right now we're just displaying the title, but we also have the information about the completed if it's true or false. So let's go to the end here. Let's hit enter. Not that much, but here I just want to have a new prop. Let's use the default. We can use the default checked to pass in or read to see if the to-do here that we're receiving, to see the to-do that completed. So if it's true, we want to return true. If it's false, we want to return false. So we can use this here to have this input checked by default. If this is true, if the to-do is completed, it's gonna be, the checkbox is gonna be true, so it's gonna be checked. If it's not completed, it's gonna be false, so it's not gonna be checked. So right now, all the pending to-dos are unchecked. And now if you scroll down, let me refresh. It doesn't seem like it's working. There we go. Now these are checked, right? Because right now these are completed, and all of these here, they should be true. So now the checkbox is highlighted. But if you unclick this, nothing happens, right? Not yet. So let's work on this. Let's have let's work on our app.js at the top. And let's work to create a new function. So let's have a function here, create. Let's have in the kind of like update, because we're update a to-do. This is part of the update. So we're going to create a function. Let's call this one mark completed. Keep missing the E. Let's set that to a arrow function. And in this function, we want to receive an ID of the to-do we want to mark as completed, right? So we're gonna take in a argument here. Let's call this parameter to-do ID. And we're gonna use this ID to find the to-do in the to-dos array that we want to update. So before we do that, remember we should never update the state directly. So what we need to do here, let's create a copy. So let's say const to-dos copy equals, we can create a quick copy using to-dos dot slice, and that is going to return a copy of the to-dos array. So this to-dos array that we have at the top, we're just creating a copy by copying from start to beginning by calling slice and not passing anything here. So we're gonna have a to-dos copy. So the next step we want to find the index of the to-do that we want to update. And we can do that by using the find by index method on the array. So we can say const to-do index or IDX for sure. We're gonna set that equals to to-dos copy. So we're gonna use the copy to run the dot find index, and we're gonna find the index. So we're gonna grab each to-do in the to-dos copy, which are all the to-dos is just a copy. And then we're gonna look at each to-do. We're gonna look at the to-do.id that matches the to-do ID that we're looking for. So whatever value we pass to the mark completed function. So we're gonna look at every to-do.id, and then when we find that is equals to the one we're looking for, this is going to give us the index or the location of that to-do that we found. So the next step we need to do would be to grab the let's see, we can do the to-dos we can grab, let's see here. Let's grab the to-dos copy. I need some water. To-dos copy, and then let's use the to-do IDX that we found. And so we're accessing a to-do inside of the to-dos copy by the index. And then we're gonna set the dot completed to equals and the opposite of to-dos copy, to do IDX. So we're gonna grab the to do IDX of the dot completed. To do IDX, not to do's. So this should grab the to do's copy, use the to do index that we found right over here, and then the completed property, we should set it equals to the opposite. So whatever that is at the moment, we want to set it to the opposite. So that way we can kind of like toggle on and off, completed and not completed. And then we are going to update our state, calling set to do's and passing we're going to pass in a new array. We're going to spread dot to do's copy. To do's copy like so. And then let's test this out. So we're going to pass in the mark completed function now. We need to pass it down to the to-dos list because the to-dos list is the one that is rendering each to-do. So let's pass in here. Right, so a little bit of prop drilling. We need to pass it to to-dos list. In to-dos list, we're going to receive it or destructure that here. And then we need to pass this to both the pending and the completed. So we're going to pass it to the to-do item here as another prop here and here. And we also need to pass in here, because maybe you want to mark one of the to-dos back to pending if you want, or not completed. So now that's saved. We're passing it to the to-do item in here and also in here, because these two are two separate lists, but they're rendering the same component. So we just need to go to the to-do item, receive the prop, and then the only thing we need to do here is when we have an onChange on the checkbox, so we can do onChange here. We can listen for an onChange event. So what we want to do, we can just pass an arrow function here and call whenever an onChange happens. We're going to call the mark completed, and we're going to pass in the to do dot id. Right, so now we're listening to an onChange event. We're passing just a arrow function definition here because we don't want to call this right away. I mean, because we're passing a value here. So if we don't do that and we do it like this, we'll be calling the function right away. So we need to pass in an arrow function so we can pass in the to-do ID. And then this to-do ID is going to go to this function, to-do ID. We're creating a copy so we don't update the state or manipulate the state directly. We use the to-do. We find the index of the to-do by looking at the to-do's copy, using find index, grabbing each to-do and finding a to-do with the ID that we're looking for. Then we use that index of the to-do to update the completed property to the opposite. If it's completed, we're going to make it incomplete. If it's incompleted, we're going to make it complete. So if it's true, it's going to go to false. If it's false, it's going to go to true. It's just kind of like toggling on and off. And then we're going to set to-dos. We're going to pass in a new array with the to-dos copy spread in here. And then we could also call the show alerts, and we can pass in a new message here of to do, and we can pass it to do marked as completed, or whatever you like to say here. To do mark as completed. Yeah, that's fine. You can change those messages if you want. We can say to do completed. I don't need to say all of that because it's a little redundant. To do completed. So let's say we save this here. Let's give it a quick refresh just in case. And now we have, let's create a brand new one. This is a little bit slow. Let me let it refresh. Let's now work on deleting a to-do. So right now in our application, if we click on delete, nothing happens here yet. Our checkbox is working. We can click on a to-do. We can make all of these completed if we want. Now we have no pending to-dos. All of them are completed, but we can also toggle this back to the pending state if we want, so we can put them back into the pending list in here. So now this is just to mark it completed if we want to. And then the delete here, let's work on this one. We're going to leave the update for last, which is the hardest one to do. So for the delete, let's head over to app.js, and after the update here, let's put a delete. Let's create a function here. Let's call it delete to do. For the delete to do, we're deleting the to do again by the ID. So we're gonna receive a to do ID here inside of our function. And I'm missing an equal signs here. So in here, what we need to do, we need to, let's just have, we can use the filter method from the arrays, the array method filter. So let's say const up, let's call this one updated to-dos, which is going to be the return array that is going to be given to us by calling to-dos dot filter. But here we're going to be, let's create a copy just so we can keep this from best practices here. Let's call this one to-dos copy. Let's set that equals to to-dos dot slide. All right, we're gonna work with our copy again. Then we're gonna do const updated to-dos. I'm gonna set that equals to to-dos copy dot filter. So we're going to modify. Well, filter doesn't modify. Yeah, we don't need to make a copy actually, because filter doesn't modify the actual array. It returns a new one actually. So yeah, we don't need this copy here. Let's just get rid of this copy. Let's just use to-dos here, and then we're going to grab each to-do, and then we're going to return all the to-dos that the to-do dot ID is not equals to the to-do ID that we're looking for. So we basically filtering out. Let's fix this updated to-dos, and let's say, what do we have here? Cannot assign. Let me see, what are we missing here? cons updated to do's equals to do that filter to do that. Oh, I need complete the arrow function. Come on. So in here, we just kind of like filtering out this to do, the to do ID that we're gonna pass in, right? So we're saying return all the to dos that they're not equals to this to do. So all of them are going to be returned except for the one that is, we're going to say return all of them that are not equals to this to do that we're looking for. That's basically what we're saying here. So in here, we're gonna get a updated to do, so we can call the set to dos, and then we can pass in our updated to dos here, and then we can do the show alerts and say to do deleted. And that's it. So what we need now is to pass down again this function, right? So we declare this function at the top. We're passing it down via props to the to-do list because we need to pass it to the to-do item. So here we're going to create a prop called to delete to-do. I'm going to pass in our delete to-do function. So then we need to go to the to-do list because the to-do list is the one rendering each one of the to-do items. So we need to take in the deleted to-do, the delete to-do, and then we want to pass it to each one of these because the user can delete it at any time they want. So we can just pass it here. When they create a new to-do, or if they want to delete any of the to-dos here, they can do that in here as well. Make it simple for them. So now that we pass in the delete to-do to where we're rendering the to-do item, now what we need to do is go back to the to-do item, receive that new function, and we need to attach this delete to-do to our button here, the delete button. So the button here, after we have the class name, we can put it even before. If we want, we can say we're going to listen for a on click this time, and when this button is clicked, actually equals curly brackets, we want to call this delete to do, and we need to pass the to do, right? Remember we have each to do here, so we're gonna pass in the to do dot ID, and I need a greater than sign here. There we go. So now let's test this out. If I click delete, 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 to do deleted, delete, 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 delete everything if we want. Let's wait for these to go away. Delete. If we want, we can add new ones. So learn HTML, create, learn JS, create, learn React, and then we can add this one as well. Sorry about that. That was my terminal saving something. So here we have 3 new to-dos. We can mark this one and say we already learned HTML. We completed that one. I click on React. Let me click on the right one again. Learn HTML. Learn JavaScript. Now we still learning React, so we can keep this one here. And then when we finish learning it, we can click on the to-do. So still pending. If we want, we can also delete from here if we want. Cool, so that's everything for the delete. This one was pretty easy, right? So the final one that we need to do is the update. So right now when we click on update, I want to show a form. So for that, we're going to let's create a first let's work on the what should we do first? Let's see. Let's set the let's work on the to-do item. We can work on the to-do item. Yeah, we can do, so in the to-do item here, right, we want to render, since we have the information about each single to-do here, we're going to continue working here. So after the delete button down here, we could say here something like edit to-do form, which we're gonna display it down here. So down here, we want to have a div, another div here, so we can separate this here. And we want to set a class name of static to this div, because I want to display the form kind of like a to be displayed on top here, so to be displayed absolute. So this is where we're going to display the form, which we're going to create again separately, so we can review some of the steps that we need to do again. So this one we're going to do it a little bit quicker, because we can copy, or we can just type it everything out again. So let's create a new file. Let's create edit to do form.js. And for this one, this is going to look pretty similar to the one we did before. So we can actually just copy this. Should we do... Let's type some of the stuff out first. Function edit to do, and then we're going to return a div. Inside the div, we want to return an h3. This one's going to say update to do. Alright, let's put the export default at the bottom here. So update to do form. Update, edit to do. Let's call it edit to do form, so we can continue with the same name form that we had from the previous form. So now we have edit to do form, create to do form. Let's remove this. This was imported by mistake. So now down here, we need a form. And then the form here, we need inside the form, we need pretty much the same thing we had in the other form. So we're going to, let's see, let's look at the other form, create here. So let's see what we're going to need. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna need the label. So the label here, we can grab the same label pretty much. So we could make the form reusable, but yeah, let's type it out so we can just kind of like go through the motions again. So let's go back to here. So again, we're going to need a label here, right? And if you want, you can copy it, but this will create that muscle memory in the more you type. So let's have a enter. What do we have in the other one? We had enter a task. So let's have the same, enter a task. And then we're gonna have a space. We're gonna have an HTML4 here. We can set that to, what did we set it last time? I think we did title. This is gonna be for the title. And then we're gonna have an input of type text. Also try to, if you want, you can have this as an exercise and try to recreate it yourself, because we're gonna pretty much do the same steps, right? So we're setting the name of the form, we're setting the ID, and then we're gonna have the placeholder. We're gonna say the placeholder now that says we don't need placeholder because this one is going to be already populated with some of the information, or the information like the title should be loaded there. So let's see here what we need. So we have the type, we have the name, ID. Let's create the state here. Oops. Let's bring in the state. Let's do import the state from React. Right? So now in the input for the title, let's create a state variable title, just like we did before, and set title. But this time, since we're gonna have some information, we're going to receive the to-do information here. We're gonna pass it as a prop here, right? And then we're gonna use it to initialize the state variable to the to-do dot title. Right, that's gonna be the initial value. So whatever the title of the existing to-do, which we're gonna receive via props, we're going to initialize this state variable here, and then we can pass this title as the value to the input title in here. So now when we load the edit form, we're receiving the to-do, we're initializing the title state variable to the to-do that title. Perfect. So now let's see what else we need here. We have the form. We're gonna create a function. We need to pass down a function so we can pass it to the handle submit. So let's see what else we need. We need, after the input here, we also need a input of type submit, and we're gonna set the value or the text of that form. We're gonna set it to say update or edits. Let's say update. Cool. All right, right now we cannot see it because we're not rendering that anywhere, but we could render that just so we can see it. We can bring it back over the to-do item. So let's go back to the to-do item. Let's import in the to-do item right at the top. Import edit to-do form from /edit to-do form. We're gonna render this inside of this div, but I want to have another div here, and I want to set this one to we're gonna display that in here in a second. Let's just render the edit to do form here. Let's see. We need to pass in the to do here because it's screaming at us that this is undefined. So we have the to do information here. We need to pass it down here. So to do So now we pass in the to do from here, we're passing it down to the edit form in here, and then we're initializing the state variable to that to do title. We can see it here. Kind of broke the UI here, but we're gonna fix that in a second. Cool, so now we have the form here. Let's set this here to absolute. So it kind of sets on top of the form, and we're gonna fix that a little bit better in a second. So let's see here. So we don't always want to show the update form here, so we're gonna create some local state here. At the top here in the to-do item. To-do item here we can initialize a new variable. Let's call this one show edit form, and we're gonna set the function name set show edit form, so we can control when do we want to show the form, or the user can do that. So use state, we're going to initialize that to false. So at the beginning we don't want to show the form. Cons show let me see, what is the error here? Use state is not defined. We need to import use state. Cool. Alright, so now we have a new state variable which we're going to use to either show the edit form. At the beginning we're not going to show it, but we're going to have a button, or when we click on update we should show the form. So let's use this new variable to conditionally render the form at the bottom. So we're going to wrap this here into curly brackets. And we're going to only render this if show input form is true. So we're going to do show edit form and then edit form. So if this is true, then it shows the edit form. Right now it's set to false at the beginning. So if this is false, this is not going to be evaluated. So we're not going to see the edit form. But if I change this to true, we can see the form again. So now we need a way to update this here. So the way we want to do that is just to the edits, to the update button we have here. We just want to set a on click. I'm going to say on click. So when the user clicks on this, I just want to call the, I'm going to pass an arrow function here. I'm going to call the set show edit form to the opposite of show edit form, so it can work like a toggle again. So now if we click on this, we can show it. If we click on it, it hides, it's gonna hide it. Cool, that works for now. So now we have in this edit to do form being rendered here at the bottom. So let's see what we need to do next. So now, well, let's see. Let's head back to the edit to do form. In here, let's add, let's see, let's look at the form right now is unreadable. So let's just do in the div here, let's just add a class name. And let's do bg-amber-300. And then let's do a padding of 5. Let's also do a margin bottom -10. And that's, oh, that's absolute. So that should be, let's just make it round for now, rounded. Cool. So let's see what else we need here. The h3, let's just have a class name. of font dash bold. And then let's do the same for maybe the label. Cool. So now label is fine. We can do some padding to the input. We can just do b-1, and then to the button here we can just do class name. We're gonna add a margin left and right of 1. Okay, that push it to the bottom, but yeah, just let me see, 5. Yes, you can play around with the values. I'm just gonna set it to 1. Then we can do a bg dash violet dash 500, and let's do text dash white maybe, and let's do a p-1, and then rounded. Cool, that's fine. That's what we need. So right now, when the form opens, we have the update to do form, and then the text is here, right? So the text is right over here. So right now, if we want to update this here, we cannot. So in here, we just need to go to the input here, right? And on the input, we can listen to a onChange. We can make also this require, make sure there's some text in there. OnChange, we can do a, let's see here, we can pass it in a function right here. We can take in the events. We don't need to create a separate function here because we're just gonna call it set title. We need to click create a handle change. We could, but we can just pass it in here and pass in that target, that value, because this is the only thing we need to do here. So now we have an onChange. So when something changes inside the input, we're gonna call the set title. We're gonna pass in the event that happened, and we're gonna pass in the value, which is the text that we're passing here. So we can delete now and change this to learn HTML, for example. And then update doesn't do anything. Well, it refreshes the page. That's fine. This is not what we want, but we're almost there. So we changed the text so far. So next thing we need to do, we need to handle the form submission here, so it doesn't happen, the refresh doesn't happen. So here what we need to do is that we need a update, we need a function to update the to do. So we can go back to app.js, right? In app.js, so what we need to create, so we have the delete update. We can put the update down here. We can put it here. We can call this one update to do. Update to do is going to receive some information here, so we can update it to do. So we're going to need the to do ID, of course. And then what else we're gonna need? Let me close this to-do list, and then to-do list item for now. In here, right, what we want to do, we want to pass this to-do item, and to get all the way to the edit to-do form, well, we're gonna pass it down to to-do list. So in to-do list, we need to pass in update to do. And in to-do list, we need to receive it, just like we're doing with the rest of the stuff here. And then we need to pass it to the to-do item, because the to-do item is rendering the form inside. So we're doing some serious prop drilling, but later when we learn how to implement something else, we're gonna come back and fix this up. So in the to-do item, are we receiving this here? To-do list, we pass it down. Right, we can pass it down here. If we need to edit it here, we can also pass it here. And then we're gonna go to the to-do item, receive a destructure, that prop. And we need a comma, not a dot here. So now the update to do, we can pass it finally to the edit to do form, which is going to be the one that needs to call that. So we're passing this from the app component to the to-do list, to the to-do item, to the edit to do. So 1, 2, 3, 4 levels down. So now here in the edit to do, we could receive the update to do, which is what we need to do here in the edit form. So now that we have the update to do, we can listen to a on submit here, and we can just pass in the function definition here instead of defining one at the top, just so we can see how we do. We can just do it here. We're gonna call this update to do, and to update to do, let's see what information we need in order to do this here. So we can pass in the to-do.id. To-do.id is the to-do. And then we also need to pass in this new state, which is the title. So we're gonna pass in the title, which is gonna be the new data, in order to update the to-do. So we need the ID and the new text that the user just typed into the form. And then here, let's take in the event, and let's say e.prevent default here, and then we're gonna call this update to do, passing the to-do ID and the to-do title. And then we could close the form. We could close the form here, but to close the form, we need to pass from the to-do item. We're gonna do that in a bit. Let's just focus on updating first. Here we have let's mark this as to do. Close the edits form so we don't forget. So let's focus on the code to update to do, which we already have here. We pass in the to do ID and the title, so we can go back to app.js. In this function definition, we're receiving the to do item and the new title. And now here, we need to do a few things to finish up. We need to, let's create a copy like we did previously, because we need to find the ID. So let's do to-dos copy, just like we did before. We're gonna say to-dos dot slice. Whoops. Create the copy. And then here, we're gonna say const to-do idx equals to-dos copy dot find index. We're gonna grab each to-do. We're gonna look at the to-do.id, and we're gonna look one that's matching the to-do ID that we're passing from the function call. And then we're gonna use that index to grab the to-dos, copy, and then square brackets to do idx, and then we're gonna set the dot title to equals the new title, and then we're going to set the to-dos to a new array, and we're gonna do let's just spread dot 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 to-dos copy to make sure we got a fresh copy of the data. And then we can also call the show alert and pass in to do updated. Cool. So let's see now when we click on update, all of this code should run. Let's see here. If we update this here now, let's refresh to make sure. Let's click update. Change this to learn React, and then hit update. To do updated, learn React is updated. We got the new text. We just need to close this form here when we click update. So this is working. This is doing its job. So now to finish this up, we're going to go back to to-do item. Remember, to-do item is where we had the local state to show the form. So we could pass these two values, set edit form and set show form, to the edit to do form down here. So let's copy these names. All right, we can pass that here because now we want to be able to call these from inside of this component, or for inside of the form, which is this UI element here. So we're gonna pass it here. And now in the form right here, we're going to receive each one of these and then also show, it doesn't matter the order, so I'm going to put it here, set edit form and set show edit form. So we are going to call this function, we're going to call it here in the placeholder we left here. We're going to call it here. We're going to set this to the opposite of show edit form. So now if we try this again, let's do update. It gets updated. If I click update again, let's say learn JavaScript and hit update. We get the text, we get to do updated, we can mark it as complete, we can delete, we can close these if we want, we can put this one back to here, to the pending to-dos. So let's see, I think we're done. I think we have right now everything we need. So right now we can read to-dos, right? We can read the to-dos that we created, and then we're fetching some of these, so we can read the ones that we're fetching. Now if we want, we could delete this here, but right now we're just gonna leave it here for now. But if you want, you can take this out of here, and in the next when we refactor this app to keep learning, we're going to do some changes here as well. But if you want to take this out, you can do it. So right now we can do full CRUD, right? We can read the to-dos that we have in our state. We can create new to-dos. And then we can delete to-dos if we want to delete this one, right? We can delete it. We can also mark this as complete. And then we can update our to-dos as well. All right, I think this completes our application, at least the first version of our app. Later on, we're going to learn a few more tricks that we can do in React to refactor this app. Because some of these things I did it on purpose, like prop drilling. So later when we learn new hooks that are going to help us to clean up our code, we can reuse this application and keep updating the performance and the code inside of this app. So that's it for now. I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one.